Okay, welcome to a tutorial on the short race. I'm at Bermuda and I usually come about 10 minutes before just to set up and have a look at the course. The course itself is always the same, um, and it's important to determine which side that you want to really start on. This is determined by the wind and where the upwind mark is. In this case here, I'm probably going to try to start on the starboard side. You'll notice that during the video I don't actually do that, but it does kind of help sometimes. It's really determined by how the wind is oscillating at that time. So we want to go in a south-southwesterly sort of line, because if we go south we're going to be way too far away from the upwind mark. We don't want to go away from the mark too much. You could do this in a number of taking a number of tacks, or doing one straight leg and then one straight leg back. I prefer a number of tacks. Anyway, with some time before the race, I want to trim up. So I set off on a course that I want, and I make sure that I have set my sails properly, and also make sure that I've set my my bearing to the wind. So sometime later, having set up my sails, I leave them as they are from now on. I don't bother trimming as I'm moving across. I can do it if I want to, but I prefer to just leave it. I'm a little bit lazy sometimes. Anyway, with some time left, we've got about 3 minutes left. I'm going to do a quick parallel run across the line. So I've stuck out there in irons for a while, and now I'm going to do a parallel run across the line, see how long it takes me. I could probably do this, 4 or 5 minutes before the start. This gives me a good idea of how much time it takes to go across the line, or parallel with the line, sorry. And yeah, I think there's 2 or 3 ways to really start, and this is one of them. So I'm just slowly going across here. So as the counter is timing down, I'm sort of checking how long it's taken me to traverse this. And it took, around about a minute or minute and a bit. So I'm about to turn around again. I'm not too worried about being on a starboard tack or a port tack in this race, because there's only 2 competitors. Obviously, if there's more competitors, you need to take that into consideration. If you watched my previous video on the rules of racing, that will pretty much give you a good idea that the tack that I'm on right now, the starboard tack, is will give you right of way if there's a lot of people around. Not in all situations, obviously. If there's other people on starboard tacks, you need to take it easy. Anyway, I basically make a bit of a mistake here. We've got 40 seconds to the line. I should have turned back around in a clockwise manner, but instead I go anti-clockwise. Kind of a little bit silly of me. But I'm showing a lot of this just because I think the start is very, very important in the race. It's secondary only to the tacking leg. But if you start as late as I do in this race here, and there's a lot of people racing, then you know, catching up that 15-20 seconds is it's not very good. And as you can see, the race has started now, and I'm quite a ways from the line. So I really should have timed that a little bit better. But I think you get the point. Go parallel and cross around. So I'm just going to do this start again, just showing you what I mean by that. So after the race, I quickly came back to the line, and I go parallel to the line here. And as you can see, if the counter was ticking down and then it got to 0 or close to 0, I could then quickly just tack across, or sorry, power up, and get going. Anyway, back to another start. In this case here, I've just sort of kept in irons, and then when the timer would have got fairly close, I would have then gone straight to the line. I don't particularly like people that just sit right next to the line and then start like that. It doesn't really happen a lot in regular races. If there was a committee boat, they'd probably not be very happy with you. Anyway, back to the actual race itself. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at my VMC and my VMG. I'm keeping an angle of around about 40 degrees. I can go less than that if I wanted to. Checking my trim, and as you can see, I've seen that my bearing to waypoint is past the TWA, or the TWS, sorry, and I cross over and I tack. Later in the next video, I'll talk about finding speed, but basically with your VMC and VMG, you basically need to try and get as high numbers as you possibly can, and sometimes you need to change your angle of attack to get that speed. I like working between around about 35 to 45 degrees when I'm tacking upwind. And as you can see, every time that I'm tacking here, I'm tacking when the red indicator has gone past the bearing to waypoint. Sometimes I leave it go a little bit longer because I want to find position. And this is not the only way to tack upwind. As I said before, you could make a long, a longer path along and then cut back. But it's really, best sometimes to do the simple things first until you become more aware of the angles involved in being able to do that effectively. I just tried to do a quick reef here, but I found that the speed wasn't good enough. And even though I'm getting a lot of heel, the boat is still running okay. I probably could have set up a little bit better for this wind. It was oscillating between 15 to 19. It's getting to the fairly high range. But as you can see, I'm not really under a lot of pressure today to get that done. And it's more about just showing you my tacks. So getting fairly close to the line now, and I could possibly just go almost to the line, which is the upwind mark to the jibe mark, and then cut back across, or what I'm about to do, which is make another tack here and attack back. It really depends on where the wind is. If I'd had a bad angle, I would have kept on going, but this is a better angle to cut back towards the upwind mark, which I've done. I've decided that over 40 degrees is not really a good TWA, and I could bring it down a little bit more if I wanted to. The next part is fairly critical. You've really got to judge the angles. You could do some quick maths in your head and find that angle. I do that sometimes. I didn't in this occasion, and it didn't really matter. But I usually try to keep, you know, around about 40 degrees. I can, if the wind is against me, I can bring it down to, you know, 35, 34, and that will be okay too, because I'm so close to the mark that it doesn't matter. Now the next part is critical. I change over to keeping a course, and as I turn around the mark, trying not to hit it, I let out my main, and my main actually does go through the mark there, bad me. And I'm letting out the Genoa as well. Some people don't do this. Some people just bring down the Genoa straight away. I like to let it out a little bit, just keep that speed up, fill up the Genoa, and then get the Jenica up as quickly as possible. Get that Jenica sheet set and make sure the main is okay. You'll probably have to ease the outhaul on the downhill, on the downwind, and maybe even, you know, as I'm doing here, pull the vang in a little bit as well. And there you're set. Now, because I've set a course, the boat is not going to change with the wind, so now I'm going to have to do quite a lot of checking of the Jenica and the main to make sure that I've got the right angle at all times. I'm not 100% sure whether it should be in the yellow or the white. I keep it in the white. And here is this bloody flag that gets in my way and annoys me so much in the downwind leg. So I usually go up high so that I can actually see boats behind me. So a little bit of time later, not too much time later, we're coming up to the jibe mark, and a jibe is obviously where the sails are going to cross over. And I do notice that some people will adjust their sails as they're going around the jibe. You could do this potentially in, or I could do this potentially, but in these winds, I don't. I think there's enough momentum to get the boat around fairly quickly. In lesser winds, you might find yourself having to adjust the main at least as you go around. But usually, because the angle is pretty much the same if you've set up pretty well, that when you do the jibe and you're going back in the other direction, you'll find that your trim is almost right anyway. So once again, trying to be as smooth as possible and just set up. So a little bit of time later, getting onto the final mark here, and this one is a run, and you've got to notice where the wind is coming, because at 180 degrees you're not going to be doing much. Maybe you'll do some wing on wing like here, but I don't want to do that because the speed is too low. I like to point up less than 160. I think that the Janica is probably best between 140 and 150. And just adjust everything again. And you can see my angle to the wind there. This doesn't always work. Sometimes it's better to go straight for the line, but in this case I'm just showing you something a little bit different. So once again, the wind is not perfect for me, but I've got about 160 degrees, and just adjusting again. And it's the slow ride home. Well, not that slow, at 7.5 knots, but good enough. And there we go, coming across the finish line in 31:33. Not a bad time. Probably could shave a little bit more off that time for sure. And usually wait at the end, say hello to people who have raced. And yeah, just get to know the community a little bit more. So that basically covers what I do in the short race. I hope you've enjoyed.